for December of this year. Hopefully 2021 looks a little bit better for everyone. Starting to look up, vaccine and on the way and everything. So we wanted to kind of end the year with the conf20 highlights. This is some selected ones from Dave, John, Brett, and myself, as well as some of the ones that the Austin user group also had selected, one of our sister user groups. We'll go through the highlights, and then at the end of it, we'll just have a open forum. Some of the feedback that we got from the previous user groups was that with these kinds of sessions, they're not very personal, very lecture-y. So we wanted to really kind of open it up, have everyone introduce themselves if you feel comfortable. If you have any job postings, that's another great use for the user groups, and any sort of challenges that you have coming up in the next year. Maybe some other folks can provide feedback or any sort of insight that they've had of similar problems. So we'll kick off with the forward-looking statements. I'm not a Splunk employee, so I'll pass it over to Brett.
Hi, everyone. I miss seeing you all having a beer, so something to look forward to next year. But yes, that's also something that we're looking forward to. Forward-looking statements, you've all seen this because you've all been to Splunk events before. And we will talk about stuff that maybe is not in the product or you don't have access to yet. But most of the stuff, since it was in conf, is public facing. So yeah, Sean, you want to go to the next slide, and I'll give these guys credit. So I snoop on some other user groups just to see what other people are doing, what other groups are doing. And I thought this was a good one. Suman, who he's actually does some professional services work for us too. So he's, maybe you've even worked with him. He put this deck together, a lot of this deck that we've has influenced what we're going to show you here. And Kyle McCreary, who's an SE, one of Dave and John's counterparts. Next slide, Sean, and we'll talk about, so just some numbers. I don't know how you all experienced it, but I was a little overwhelmed. There was so much content, and I couldn't quite see it all. And so it's nice that there is a library that you can review later. And Sean, if you go to the next slide, this actually we got from our marketing team or the comp team, and they gave us access to the top, 5 or 6 from each track. And our brave leader, Sean, was the #1 for the platform track. So well done, Sean. Keep that going. And so the way to find these is once you get into, if you go to the next slide, I think we got some, Sean, you put together some, here you go. So you can search the library either using that previous slide and the codes or some keywords. And once you've done it a few times, it's pretty easy to find what you're looking for. But you also have that first drop down there is for event. You can look back to, I think, as far back as 2018. So there's a lot of great content here. And we're just going to talk about some of the highlights, some of the ones we really liked. And then the next slide here is just going over the high-level keynotes. So Sean and I were talking, and we don't want to go too in-depth to this, but I think the audience for these, we've all seen the keynotes. We know that Splunk is trying to help you on the cloud journey. And we, Doug really talked about that. He dug into, why we're cloud first, what the data to everything is, why we made some acquisitions, and then the 3 solutions: security, IT, and observability. And then today, I think officially Flowmill is a part of Splunk. So they weren't at Conf, but they are now. So that was Doug's talk. And I think these are good to share with your executive level folks, kind of talk about, what is the overall vision of Splunk. Tim got into a bit of the weeds with DSP and machine learning, and then, of course, federated search. So this is stuff to share with, peers of Tim's and of Doug's, that to understand what our vision is And then finally, we'll look at Sender real quick. He did a little deeper dive into what we consider data to everything, what our strategy is for the cloud. And yeah, I mean, that's really it. If you haven't heard the shtick, then you've been hiding under a rock. So then for us in this group, I think the tactical stuff, in this slide, what's new in 8.1, what are you getting with being a cloud customer? Splunk as a service is, we're going to increase our release train. Those cycles are going to speed up. And then hopefully, rather than asking for submitting a ticket for a TA to get installed, you'll be able to do it yourself. So that's all coming. I don't have a date for that, but if you look up this PLA 1129A, you can hear Izzy Park and Asmir Mohammed talk about it. I get to work with Asmir on a few projects. He's a great guy to work with. So there's what do we call it? SPL2. A lot of good stuff coming. And this next one, I think if you all in the security world haven't met James Brodsky, it's now no time like the present. He creates so much content for us. Really like this talk. Besides, being super informative, gives you some real action items. And I think the big bullet here is the top 12 work from home data sources to ingest. I'm sure you're all doing a lot of this already. But if you go to, the library, go to this talk, you can go to the slides. You don't have to watch this whole talk, although I recommend it. But as you go through the slides, each one of these 12 slides talk about the data source, why it's important, what the data models are that where you're going to use this data source, and other technical add-ons that you're going to want to also look into. So take my advice, definitely check out any talk that James does. And he also gives in the last slide of his deck a link to a living Google Drive where he's continually updating. He just updated it last November, or this November, and that's where this doc is. So check it out. It's, if you haven't met James, you got to meet James. Happy to facilitate a talk with him for my customers, and because it's always enlightening. I think, Sean, is that the last one for me? I kick it over to Dave. Is he going to take it from here?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. So, thanks. So the couple of talks that I attended, I thought were really, really good was this one about open telemetry by Steve Flanders. Steve, he's really involved with the open telemetry project. It was actually the highest rated DevOps talk at .conf this year, so people were really interested in his discussion. Talked about the different pieces that are involved with open telemetry, which is actually a combination of two different other open source projects, Open Census and Open Trace. And they went over some of the things that you can do with the open telemetry agent, which is, you can collect metrics and traces now with that particular agent and run them through a processing engine and then output them to another platform, to an analysis engine, Splunk, of course. And the configuration, he walked through some of the simple configuration aspects of it. It's all done by YAML files, so I think it's a pretty easy way to do those configurations. Logs, those are the kind of the three pillars: is metrics, traces, and logs. The ability to collect logs with the open telemetry agent is coming. It's in the works right now. So being able to have a single agent to be able to do all of those collections, I think, is going to be really awesome moving forward. Splunk is one of the biggest contributors to the open telemetry project, but there's a lot of other people who are contributing to this project. All the different cloud providers, a lot of different vendors are contributing as well and moving their platforms to OpenTelemetry. And then end users like MailChimp and Postmates and Shopify have all contributed different libraries with different languages like Ruby and things like that to the project. So it's something that's definitely gaining some momentum. And I think it was a really interesting discussion about what you can do with OpenTelemetry and kind of what the direction is for that. And then Jim Apker and Kyle Champlin did a talk on risk-based alerting. Jim, this is something that he has been advocating for a long time. This again is was the highest rated security talk at Conf. We've had MITRE attack tactics and techniques included within Splunk. It's within an app, a standalone app. It's within Security Essentials, Enterprise Security. But now to be able to just do it, use or add that context from MITRE attack into your searches is right within core. So you can just add in MIT that lookup command to your search, and it'll give you the information about the tactics or techniques, and then the ability to detect those low and slow attacks that aggregate that risk over a period of time is also part of risk-based alerting. And what risk-based alerting is really going to help you do is really reduce the number of alerts that the SOC may have to abandon. Just they don't have time, they don't have the bandwidth to investigate every single alert, every single event that comes up. But with risk-based alerting, it decreases the number of alerts that you're seeing, but the ones that are being bubbled up by enterprise security those are real alerts. They're real things that the analysts have a high level of confidence that they need to go and investigate. So it definitely decreases that abandonment of alerts. There's when you're just looking at alerts from just like a matching type of detection, you're not always sure what the context is, and that's a lot of work that you have to do on the front end. And with risk-based alerting, it adds that context because you're adding in information about the identity of the person that the attack may be targeting or the system that it's targeting, so you can really have a high level of confidence that this is something you need to pay attention to. So. And they did a lot of enhancements to the out-of-box correlations with risk-based alerting, so that it's being more built in directly into enterprise security, and it's not something that you have to go in and really do a lot of configurations to get. So I thought this was a really interesting talk, and I think risk-based alerting is definitely something that is going to be really the wave of the future for enterprise security. And I may have said role-based alerting a couple of times because I keep getting role-based access and risk-based alerting mixed up, but it's risk-based alerting. So anyway.
So kind of segueing off of the risk-based security, it really speaks to Jason and Brian over at Lockheed Martin, one of the talks that they presented, and really applying that risk-based model to their enterprise. And of course, Lockheed Martin being the target of nation state adversaries really need to have a solid understanding of their infrastructure, the alerts that they get. They can't chase down everything, but how do they chase down what's important? So in conjunction with Jim's talk, this talk I felt was also incredibly valuable because Jim will give you kind of the training wheels of how to get risk-based alerting off the ground and how to apply it to your organization. But Lockheed Martin really has it in a mature framework, and being able to see and having them share really their day-to-day framework was very valuable. In previous companies that I've been at before coming to Blizzard, the risk-based model was something that was always kind of a pie in the sky. We'll get to it one day. but there was never really an appetite to implement it because it does take a lot of work and a lot of buy-in. And selling that point of we're not looking at every alert, but the most important alerts, surprisingly does have a couple of speed bumps along the way. So they go over how they take their data, categorize it, how they weigh their data, and really that OODA loop on how they continuously improve their process to take that number one risk score, vet it, bring it through their SOC, validate it, and then bring it back to the risk scoring, have their engineers be able to tune that alert appropriately and tune the weights to get this meaningful alerting out of their enterprise. So seeing it go from Jim's talk to Lockheed Martin really was an eye-opener for me this comp. Another talk, less about security, but just another one that really kind of hit home with me in my day-to-day is a talk by Clara and Martin talking about the job inspector. And the job inspector, if you go through the Splunk fundamentals 1 and 2, maybe gets like 5 to 10 minutes tops of introduction, education, and then it's moved on really quick. But it's such a valuable tool to troubleshoot your Splunk instance. If you're running a search that may take 30 seconds to run normally, but then overnight it's taking 5 minutes, the first step is looking at the job inspector and looking at the search.log and seeing where the time and the search is really heavy. They go through a lot of the command structures, a lot of the routines, a lot of the really parsing out the parsing of a Splunk search on the back end. So you can thoroughly troubleshoot and intelligently troubleshoot your searches. They also go into showing how to turn on debug logging for the search itself, which I've had to do a couple of times and is very useful. And another really great takeaway from their talk is through the Splunk docs are absolutely great in my opinion. But one of the areas of improvement is there's so much knowledge that's in specific locations and is kind of not easily searchable. They have a nice index of all of the docs pages to look at and all of the other third-party blogs to look at to really get value out of the job inspector. So after Conf this year, I actually brought this back to the team, and we immediately implemented some additional search criteria and some additional administrative alerting to determine when searches are taking too long and why, and be able to proactively troubleshoot these searches before our director or C-levels end up saying, why is my dashboard taking 5 minutes to load? That was particularly useful to us. Another talk by the Splunk Trust was by Mason Morales. He's the senior manager over at the Splunk at Splunk team. And this was just talking about hardening your Splunk instance. So going through just the generic CIA triangle, he was really focusing on Splunk itself and not the network layer, not the host layer, but really focusing on what you need to do with Splunk to be able to ensure that you're really not going to get compromised. So whether it's an insecure deployment server or search heads, indexers, and even the forwarders, understanding how to limit your attack surface and which configs to just tune or just turn off entirely is a great start. It was really easy for us to turn the slides into a checklist and just go through the checklist and make sure we're either doing or not doing, or at least have well documented of why we're not doing it, or having mitigations in place. It turned out to be a nice checklist to have. So if you're looking for something to do right before the holiday, this might be something to kind of get that end of the year. We've hardened our Splunk servers checkbox for your annual assessment.